Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Islamic Calling Podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, brother Muslim Apologist. How are you? Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you for inviting me to your show, brother.
No problem. By the way, I think brother Abu Musa might not join because
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
he had some he has some work related issues, so I don't think he will be able to join. But I think we can just get started if that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah,
Okay, so let me pull up the video.
yeah, sure. Why not?
So basically, today we are responding to Mr. J. Smith. Hold on, let me just find the video. I think his channel is named Defender Films or something. Hold on,
Yeah, Profender is actually named after Carl Gottlieb Profender. So Profender was this missionary guy who went to India, and he was
Really?
trying to missionize a lot of. Yes, and this guy actually debated. You should know this name, Maulana Rahmatullah Al-Kiranwi Al-Hindi.
Really?
So yes, and the Maulana Rahmatullah Kairanawi, he's the one who wrote Izalul Haq, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
this book inspired Sheikh Didat and so on, right? He
Okay.
wrote this book because it was in response to Profender's book. Okay, Profender wrote a book called Mizanul Haq.
Okay.
So in response to that book, Kairanawi Al-Hindi wrote his book called Izalul Haq. Yeah,
Okay.
very interesting
So
history there actually. Yeah,
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
by the way, today we'll be responding to J. Smith, who is a very popular or infamous, should I say, uh, apologist, Christian apologist, and he has been involved in this field for how long? Do you know?
When I first started in apologetics, J. Smith was still at Speaker's Corner. Okay, he was still
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
convert people, okay, to Christianity, but not
He's still
very
failing by
successful,
now.
by the way. Yeah, he was still failing. Then this was in 1998, 1999. Yeah, I first got
Oh
involved in
wow,
1998, 1999, and he has already been around for like 20, 30 years already. So you imagine that. Yeah, that is how old he is.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually remember watching him kind of like debating Mansur Ahmed, if you
Yes.
remember, on Speaker's Corner.
I honestly I don't follow him debating anyone because at the time there wasn't any YouTube, so I only saw him
Oh,
debating from. I just read articles about him and so on. I have never actually saw him debating live, except maybe for a few times when he was at Speaker's Corner, and this was several years back. Okay, but not debating anyone particularly. Yeah.
oh,
Okay. He even I
yeah.
think
I
yeah, around this time, actually, Abdul Rahim Green was also at Speaker's Corner at the time. So imagine that. Yeah.
really.
Yes.
So a lot of people actually went to Speaker's Corner. It seems like.
Yes. Most of the apologies that you see today,
Yeah,
the Muslim ones, like for like Hamza Sozis,
yeah,
Abdul Rahim Green, etc. Those who are based in the UK, they actually came from Speaker's Corner. Yeah. They cut
yeah,
their
yeah,
teeth at Speaker's Corner, so to speak. Yeah.
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 Uh, so we should get started. So basically,
Yeah.
Jay
Sure.
Smith made
Sure.
this video
Mhm. Yeah.
about, and he tries to quote unquote expose like standard Islamic narrative. And so basically, he makes up this whole propaganda about Islam and our history.
That has been his modus right from the beginning, even during his days at Speaker's Corner. Yeah, it's nothing new. It's nothing new, really. Yeah.
So let's take a look at the video and we'll respond to it. Can you see the screen, by the way?
Yes, I can see the screen. Yeah, no issues.
Okay. Let's try this again. And what's with this country club music?
Maybe he just wants to reconnect with his American roots.
Here we are back again, Mel and Jay, 3,000 miles apart. And this
By the way,
time,
just
Mel
just to pause. Who the hell is this guy?
I have no idea who he is.
I have
I
no
was
idea
going to
either.
ask you. I was going to ask you the same question too, because when I saw the video, when I'm watching, I was asking myself, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? What are his credentials? I
Yeah,
have no idea who he is.
this
Yeah,
this Lex Luthor looking white
yeah,
dude just
yes,
came out of
yes.
nowhere. Apparently, he's an
Came
expert
out of
in this
nowhere
one.
and then started to brandish around information as though he's an expert in Islamic. Okay, you can continue with the video. I'll comment more on that.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Paul's going to introduce another sub theme of what we've been going through. Always, we've been looking at the standard Islamic narrative, SIN. Standard Islamic narrative has always said that nobody can pray to Muhammad's tomb. Anathema, haram. And that this has been in place since the time of Muhammad himself.
By the way,
So the standard is
this is something he does. He always like paint a picture, which is that there's this narrative out there. It's false.
Yes,
They're all wrong.
yes,
So
yes.
already he has presupposition that's false, and
Yes,
he's trying to
basically,
yeah.
J. Smith, he's a revisionist. Okay, he follows the orientalist thinking of There's this book by Patricia Crone and Michael Cook. Okay, called
Oh
Hagarism.
yeah, I've
So
heard
in
of it.
this, yes, I think you've heard of it. But the thing is that both authors actually have disavowed their theories in the book. Okay, so
Really?
basically, this book, yes, they have disavowed. There's actually an article about it. But of course, during this book was actually came out in the 70s, I think, 76 or 78. So in this book, both of them they proposed the idea that Islam came into being not in the 6th century, but much later in the 10th or 11th century. But the thing
Yeah.
is, both of them have already disavowed the theory already. But people like J. Smith, they keep repeating this story over and over again, and they work
Yeah.
on the
Basic.
and they yeah.
Yeah. Basically, it's a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, they
basically it's so
complete
fanciful that
nonsense. Yeah.
it's complete nonsense that no Islamic scholar or no Western scholar in Islamic studies would even entertain this idea. But only people like J. Smith would, because it
Yeah.
fits into their narrative of Islam being false. So they work from that premise.
Yeah. So he already starts with this false premise that there's this
Yeah,
narrative out there. We don't have a narrative.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly,
Everything is out in the
exactly,
open, and
exactly.
we'll talk about it inshallah. So let's.
Yes, of course, of course.
Islamic narrative from the 9th and 10th century has always instituted that it is haram, it is sinful. Well, this is idolatry. You do not pray at anybody's tomb, and certainly not Muhammad's tomb. And nobody has ever questioned that. Well, Mel's going to question it. The reason why he's going to question it, he's going to do what
Nobody ever questioned it. Here comes an expert that no one has ever heard of.
Yeah, this guy. I mean, do you want me to read the hadith on graves into place of worship? This is from Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim.
Sure,
I have
sure.
the
Go ahead.
hadith here. So
Sure, go ahead.
basically, the hadith is from Sahih Bukhari 1390
By the way, you
and
can share
Sahih.
the screen if you want.
No, I don't think I need to because
Okay.
it's actually a website. Okay, so I'm just reading from it. Okay, so it's
Okay.
Sahih al-Bukhari 1390. I'm just giving the reference number, and Sahih Muslim 529. So Aisha radiallahu anhu reported the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said during his illness from which he did not recover, Allah has cursed the Jews and Christians who have taken the graves of their prophets as places of worship. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Aisha continued, were it not for that, his grave would have been in a prominent place, but it was feared that it would be taken as a place of worship. So from this hadith alone, you can see right from the beginning, Islam has already condemned grave worship. So what nonsense is J. Smith talking about?
I don't know.
You see. This
Yeah.
is a Sahih, this is a Bukhari hadith and a Muslim hadith. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not something
So
new,
he's gonna
right?
invent his own hadith, I think.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Let's continue.
he's always done so well, he is going to go look at the historical record, and he's going to look at buildings, he's going to look at inscriptions, he's going to look at writings to see if this was the case at the beginning of the 7th and 8th and on century, and if this was haram, let's just see if the historical record supports that. Perfectly innocent
By the way,
question
this
to ask.
is another fallacy. By the way, I just want to, which is basically, I think it's called argument for ignorance or argument for silence. So basically, the idea is that just because there is no evidence for something, or even if there is, like for example, when it comes to history, right, we have very little information.
Exactly.
and he
Exactly.
always relies on this. For
Yep. Yep.
example,
Yep.
like for example, also another thing, which is that, and he always relies on this because of the Bible, right? Because
Yes.
they rely on manuscripts. But the thing is, what he doesn't count is the oral tradition, right? I mean, even the Bible itself was an oral tradition, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he doesn't rely on oral tradition, but he's fine with the Bible.
Yeah. The Bible is, of course, compiled by many scholars, written by many people, anonymous writers, by the way,
Yeah.
scribes. We don't even know who the authors are. If you
Yeah.
look at the history of the Old Testament and the New,
Salam, bro. I think you're stuck.
written by multiple.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Ah, you're back.
Okay. So anyway, basically, is this the Old Testament writers? We don't know who they are. The New Testament writers, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, they are not the people that wrote. We don't even know their real names. They're just attributed to Mark, Matthew,
Yeah.
Luke, and John. We don't even know whether those are the real people. Even
Yeah.
Paul's epistles, only 6 of them are authentically written by Paul. The rest are not. Okay. And
Yeah.
we don't know who are the authors. The rest of the books, we don't even know who the authors are. So again, what Jason is trying to
Yeah.
to talk about this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's continue. Let's see what they say.
Yeah,
Yet
sure.
perfectly important question to ask. Because we are in almost everything that Mel and Joe and Paul and Odon, and we're going to be introducing Thomas and Murad, have all found in almost every case, whenever we look at the standard Islamic narrative, we have found it to be proving wanting
didn't.
and to be proving wrong. So here we go again. One other tomb.
This is a lie. Like every time he comes up with these theories, it gets proven false. Like every single time.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. I mean,
This guy has no shame.
yeah, he doesn't.
Anyway.
In this case, to shut down. And he's going to, I think he was going to call it the slow road to a dead end. So over to you, Mel. Tell us what you found.
Right. So the slow road to a dead end. I can't resist a good pun. You probably will recognize this building here, the Taj Mahal.
Yes, I've been there many times.
Okay, yeah.
Who doesn't?
And perhaps our audience will not be familiar with this place here. In fact, I wasn't either.
Wait.
This used to exist.
Why won't they be familiar? What are they talking
Exactly. Why is it that wouldn't anyone recognize the Taj Mahal? I mean, it's a very famous monument, isn't it?
about? No,
It's
I'm
like
not.
showing.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about the mausoleum.
Yeah, the
in
mausoleum.
Mecca, right?
Oh. Yes,
I mean,
yes.
everyone
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
this. Like
Yes,
there
yes,
were,
yes.
these mausoleums there that were later destroyed. Everyone knows this.
Yes, we know this. It's very well known. So why
It's
wouldn't we
well-known
know
history.
this?
Like, why are they saying like no one knows this?
Why would anyone not know this, right? This is well known. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're trying to paint. Maybe their audience doesn't know, so they're
I
trying
think
to
they're
make
trying
it
to
seem
say
like,
that. I think
yeah,
they're trying to say that Taj Mahal somehow is related to grave worship, and then there's a monument in Mecca, and only recently it was demolished. So somehow Muslims are trying to hide this part of history or something. I don't know. I can't really read his
If
brain.
Muslims were trying to hide it, how did he find it? It's on Google.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolute morons. But anyway.
This right up to the 20th century, and it got destroyed.
Oh,
And
which one? Hold on a minute. Not the Taj Mahal. You're talking about the one.
No, this building to the right. I'm going to reveal this building later. It's a bit of a teaser. But the story I'm going to be revealing with you has got a number of key progressions. So if we look at the story arc, as it were, it tells a very different tale to what the standard Islamic narrative would have us believe.
That's a lie. No one tells a different tale. Like he's trying to make it seem like Muslims had this secret history that we try to hide.
Exactly. exactly. And that
He
the rest
somehow
of the Muslim and that the rest of the Muslim doesn't know about his history. You see,
yeah,
yeah.
and then
So
somehow
that's the thing. Yeah.
he
Mm.
dig and he found out the secret
Yeah, somehow
information.
this magical information. Yeah, we the Christians, we found it for you. Yeah, you stupid dumb Muslims. We know your history better than you do. We are trying to
Yeah,
educate you, you stupid Muslims. That's what they're implying. You see.
yeah. I
So
mean, this is absolutely moronic. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
this is
it's
clearly public
yeah.
information. Like no
I
one's
think you can
denying.
Google. I think all this information you can actually Google it these days.
Yeah,
Christians. There is something called Google. You can actually use it.
yeah,
Everyone has access to Google.
yeah. So this is absolutely false. Like this
Yeah.
whole incident of like what happened in Jannat al Baqi, I think the place name was, where all the graves are.
Hmm.
So yes, there were
Yeah.
certain mausoleums
The, the
there.
gra- the the gravesite is still there. It's just that
Yeah, yeah,
there are no tombstones. That's all. Yeah, but the grave
yeah,
is
yeah,
still there.
yeah. So there were
Yeah.
certain mausoleums there, but
Yeah.
later on they were broken apart. But these mausoleums
Yeah.
were actually built by certain caliphs that came long
Mhm.
after the Prophet
Mhm.
and the
Yes.
companions.
Yes.
Okay, so this
Yes.
was already a later edition, and many
Yes.
scholars
Exactly.
objected to this. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
this is not something that happened with the concession of the scholars. So this was
Mhm.
already wrong to begin with,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then later on it was broken. So, like it was
Yeah.
destroyed. So
Recall the hadith that I quoted earlier, right? In this session, where
yeah,
the prophet, cursed the prophet said that God cursed the Jews and Christians who built places of worship. This is
yeah,
like a foundation of our deen. You see, no,
yeah,
not to worship graves.
yeah.
So what are these people talking about?
Yeah. So yeah, let's continue.
Ibn Jubair, writing in the 13th century, describes the beautiful mausoleums in Medina. Then An-Nawawi, again writing a little bit later in the 13th century, not only describes these mausoleums, but describes how visitors to Muhammad's grave pray to him,
That's a false. That's a lie. That's not what the narration says. But I will talk about it later. It's just I'm
Okay,
giving a
sure.
teaser.
seeking his intercession before Allah. So, in other words, Muhammad, I never realized this, but Muhammad for them was an intercessor, like a demigod that
Oh, that is so false, man. Do you know that if we were to do that, we'll go to hell? Muslims or
No, no, no,
anyone who do
no, no.
yeah,
The guy is so stupid that he doesn't realize intercession doesn't mean worship.
yeah. I
Like
think he's
even
probably
if
talking about.
even
I think in the context of intercession in Islam is a bit different from
yeah,
Christianity's forms. I think in
yeah.
the what he's referring to is actually the shafa'ah that the prophet will give on the day of judgment, right? But that's
No,
not.
no,
But that
that's not what he's talking
yeah,
about. He's
yeah,
literally saying that that
mhm,
that man went to worship him, which he didn't. But
yeah,
even if for the sake of argument,
yeah,
I accept that he went to seek intercession, that still wouldn't be worship, because
yeah,
intercession is
yeah.
different from worship, right?
Exactly,
So
exactly. Yes,
so
yes, yes,
basically
yes.
he's committing kind of like this non sequitur fallacy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
regardless, let's
Agreed,
continue.
agreed.
a mediator between God and the human race. So that's quite a shocker, quite a surprise. And then Ibn Taymiyyah, who lived from 1263 to 1328, he denounces the visitation of Muhammad's grave.
That's also a lie. Even though I didn't say that. But again, I'll give more
Okay,
explain it later.
okay.
Ibn Abdul Wahhab, in the 18th century, takes up these ideas again and creates a movement, which became the Wahhabi movement, which the Saudi government have taken on until very recently, and they have spread these Wahhabist ideas right around the Muslim world. And then in 1806 and again in 1925, following an earlier reconstruction, the Wahhabis destroyed the mausoleums in Medina.
By the way, what they're saying is they're trying to paint this picture as if like Ibn Taymiyyah all of a sudden came up with this theory, which is absolutely false. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
exactly, exactly.
I mean, if you look at early history, you will see, and I will show it to you, that even from the early beginning, even even Imam Ahmed and all the early scholars, they have all condemned any kind of grave veneration, right?
Yes.
So this is not
Yes.
something Ibn Taymiyyah all of a sudden came up with.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this, inshallah.
Yeah.
Only Muhammad's grave was spared. So this is where we're heading. So what's interesting is there's quite a difference between the early part, where Muslims were quite happy to visit these mausoleums, which existed for about 1,000 years or more. And then later on, suddenly, not suddenly, but gradually over time.
What is he talking about? Muslims still visit it. Like there's nothing in Islam that says that you can visit it.
Beats me.
That doesn't mean they're worshipping it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are still, a lot of Muslims all over the Muslim world where people still visit, not just Medina.
No, I'm talking about the graves, right? Like people still go to visit the
Yeah,
graves.
even the graves. Yeah. I mean, I visit the graves too during Eid or whatever, but I don't worship the graves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a change in view of the idea of going to these graves, praying towards the grave of Muhammad and other people associated with him,
Praying,
and asking
who's
for
praying?
his intervention.
Like these guys are so jahil, like they don't know the basics. Like who's praying to the graves? Like even
I
the
don't.
most hardcore Sufis, even
Yeah.
we don't say the hardcore Sufis pray to the graves.
Mm.
Like wallahi,
Okay.
where did you get this from? This is ridiculous. Like no one's praying to the grave. Like even if you say that they're making intercession, that's still not praying. Like praying
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah. Yes.
Like for example,
right.
when Christians go to pray to Jesus, that's praying. Like they're worshiping. They're literally
They
worshiping the dead
literally
man.
take Jesus as God. That's the thing. They believe
Yeah.
that Jesus is God incarnate. So of course they
Yeah.
pray to him.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
worship.
yeah.
That's
Yes,
not like
yes.
intercession.
No, intercession would probably be something like Mary, the mother of Jesus. That for the Catholics, that would be intercession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before God, or his intercession, I should say, before God. Don't know if you want to jump in on any of that, Jay.
No, this is good because what you're bringing up, and this is something we've always known, that it is with Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah in the 1300s, so the 14th century, along with Al-Wahhab, who comes in the 1700s, 18th century. Both of them are known as the father of radicalism. And remember, it's Ibn Taymiyyah that
By the way, both of these like kind of like counter-extremist narrative.
Yeah,
That
this is
Ibn
this.
Taymiyyah and
Yeah,
Sheikh Abdul Wahhab
this,
were like these
yeah,
extremists.
this is a
Yeah.
very common narrative. Now they associate
Yeah.
this so-called fantasy called Wahhabism with
Yeah.
with Ibn Taymiyyah. And I mean, Ibn Taymiyyah did not know Muhammad Ibn Wahhab. Then why do you call him Wahhabi?
Exactly.
It's like centuries apart, and then suddenly you're calling Ibn Taymiyyah Wahhabi.
Yeah, and also like even Sheikh Abdul Wahhab was not expressing
Yeah.
any view that was like
Yeah,
somehow
He's
alien.
basically Sheikh Muhammad Ibn Wahhab rahimahullah. He was I think he was a Hanbali. I think he was a
Yeah.
Hanbali. Yeah, he was a staunch Hanbali. He did not even create his own madhab or anything of the sort. Yeah, it's only later on that people associate him with this so-called movement called Wahhabism. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I don't believe that there's a such thing as Wahhabism, of course, but this is my personal opinion. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a counter-extremist propaganda.
Yeah. It's just
Because they want to paint
it's
Muslims
the
as like these bad, evil people.
yes, and then
So they
they try to paint this terrorist, this idea that Islam has been taken over by this some sort of group called Wahhabism, and then this Wahhabism is an extremist sect that teaches people to kill others and etc. And then they associate groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS with this. Thought. Yeah. So this is the narrative in the West. Yeah.
that what says that in order to be a good Muslim, you must read the book, follow the man. The book being the Quran, Muhammad would be the man. So he was the one that would have been confronting this whole idea of bowing down to tombs, because that goes against the book and it goes against the man, supposedly. Wahhab was the one then that picked that up and created, his name was then given to the namesake that has now his whole ideology of Wahhabism, which is now rampant all over the world because of the petrodollars of the Saudi Arabians, who are dependent on him for their theological authority. So it stands to reason that these two names, and you brought them up, are the ones who have confronted this idea. But look at the dates. 1328 and 1792 are the death dates for
brother,
both
free
these
your
men.
mind. Hold on.
With that understanding,
Pause this. Lol, 9 minutes AM, and I don't know what mausoleums are. Care to explain? So mausoleums are basically kind of like a building that contains
Yeah,
graves.
yeah.
Uh,
Basically, a structure that is built over a grave. To
yeah, yeah,
put
yeah.
it mildly.
That's
Yeah.
built over graves.
Yes, yes. So it's a mausoleum. Like for example, the Taj Mahal would be one. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
mausoleum. Yeah.
yeah.
Even the pyramids also will be considered a mausoleum of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be considered
Yeah.
as such.
In a way, yeah.
Then you can
yeah.
then see that in 1800s and then 1925, they went around and then they destroyed these mausoleums. And that is still continuing today. What did ISIS do? What did
Okay,
the
okay.
Taliban? The one
Here, he's committing the logical fallacy known as appeal to extreme or red herring fallacy. Like, what the hell does Taliban and ISIS have to do with anything? Why are they being
Suddenly,
brought up?
yeah. So like I said, in the West, they like to associate this so-called radical Islamism with Wahhabism, and then
Yeah,
Wahhabism produces
yeah,
these groups called ISIS, Al
yeah.
Qaeda. Suddenly, Taliban comes into the picture. So
No,
for
I
us
mean,
in the
seriously,
Muslim world,
think
it's a
about it.
joke,
Like,
lah.
what
Okay.
relation does Ibn Taymiyyah had with and Sheikh Abdul Wahab had with like ISIS? They're not involved. They're not going around like
They don't even
putting
know
down things.
they have already passed away and met their Lord like centuries ago. Okay, so
Yeah,
how would they even know about ISIS?
yeah. So yeah, it's this whole like counter CVE narrative they have.
Yeah.
ones who've just taken over Afghanistan. Look and see what they did in when they were in power over 20 years ago. They destroyed those Buddha statues. You remember them? So this is still being carried on today. But
By the way, U.S. government had destroyed like over billions of dollars of worth of properties in Middle East, including mosques, very ancient and old mosques.
Yeah.
So like you guys did the same thing. Like, what's the point?
is that a later? Is that and what you're asking? The question is when was that introduced? I would suggest those dates you have on the screen there is when that is introduced, not the 7th and not the 8th century. Now, am I jumping the gun? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I am.
No.
But it's fascinating that you brought up the two names that I would have brought up as supports for this anathema or this attack against or anything that's idolatrous, or in this case, the tombs.
Yeah, so what I would say is that these tombs and the fact that Muslims are recorded to have visited these tombs and prayed towards the graves of people like Muhammad, that
No one prayed.
suggests that this was a belief held by possibly a large number of Muslims. It was a practice which they were in the habit of doing for centuries. These tombs supposedly go way back to the beginning. Now, I would suggest it probably wasn't the 7th century. It may have they may have been built in the 8th and 9th century, but nonetheless, we're talking about a good 1,000 years, if not more, where Muslims were visiting these places. The assumption.
But I'm gonna
Now,
skip
the most
ahead a
famous
little bit because they just
Yeah. This is a bit
get to
repetitive.
let's get to the
yeah.
main point.
Yes, right, of course.
Okay, so they explain what's a
Yeah,
mausoleum,
yes, yeah. Okay.
what's a Taj Mahal.
Actually, there was a
Basically-
remark here where he said he said something about knowing that the Taj Mahal was a mausoleum for the first time. Something around here. Yes, one. I think it was. I'm not sure whether it was Mel. I think it was Mel who said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just move ahead.
But let's just move ahead anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so let's. Okay, this is where it starts, right?
Yeah.
I
Right.
think this is where they start their propaganda.
So we're just going to move on from there. So this, at first glance, seems surprising, as hadiths teach that such places are not allowed and visiting graves is strictly forbidden. So take this example here. It was narrated from Abu Huraira, said, the Messenger of Allah said, if one of you were to sit on a live coal that burns him, that would be better for him than if he were to sit on a grave. So sitting on a grave is symbolic of visiting a grave or praying at a grave. And so there are hadiths like that which are strictly against this idea. This is part of the standard Islamic narrative. And we have here Abu Martad al-Ganawi reported Allah's messenger as saying, do not sit on the graves and do not pray facing towards them. This is from Sahih Muslim. And another one, do not pray facing towards the graves and do not sit on them. Again, Sahih Muslim. And I won't read all of these, but as you can see here, may Allah curse the Jews and Christians for they built places of worship
Yeah.
the graves of their
Hadith,
prophets.
yeah.
He quoted the same
And
hadith that I
again,
quoted, and
may
what
Allah's
this guy's
curse be
talking
on
Yeah,
the
about.
yeah.
Jews, for they built the places of
Walaikum,
worship at the graves of their
Assalam,
prophets.
Sister Jane.
Walaikum salam, Sister
So if
Jen.
you take all of that into account, if the hadiths were authentic and early, we'd expect that there to be no mausoleums either for Muhammad or his nearest relatives, right? So that seems logical.
No, that doesn't seem logical. Let me
No,
explain.
that's not logical at all. I mean, people will always innovate and they will always, do something which is
Yeah.
contrary to Islamic laws anyway. So, what the
Yeah.
hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
If you look
Okay,
in
so
history, in Christian history, it's the same thing. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let
Mhm.
me explain what logical fallacy is committing here exactly. Okay, so hold on. Let me just show you guys something. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let me just see if I have the link. So basically, his argument is that if yeah, it's basically a non sequitur fallacy. Just because we have a ruling that says something does not mean people will follow that ruling.
Exactly.
For example,
Exactly.
in Saudi Arabia, there was a BTS concert, right?
Yes.
Does that mean now concerts are halal?
I think there was a Justin Bieber concert coming up. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it mean the concerts are halal? Of course not. Just
Yeah.
because people are doing something doesn't necessarily mean that thing is allowed. People can do
Exactly.
wrong things. For
I mean,
example,
people, there are Muslims who still rape, kill, and murder, but in
yeah,
Islam we are not taught to do this. So,
yeah,
are
I
you
mean,
going to say that Islam teaches allows for this?
exactly. Just because people are so basically what they're doing is they appeal to popularity fallacy, right? So basically they're appeal to false authority fallacy.
Mm.
First of all, the popular, normal people, lay people are not an authority in Islam. Like we take a religion from the Prophet, we take it from the companions
The
and the
Sahaba,
scholars.
the first three generations, the Salaf.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We don't take it from what based on what the people do. Like even
Yes.
if tomorrow people start to worship like a camel or something, that wouldn't mean that Islam now allows camel worship, right? It's just a
Exactly.
false idea. It's a stupid idea, and it's a stupid argument.
Exactly.
So just because, so this has also this is like a red herring fallacy as well. This has nothing to do with whether
Exactly.
hadith is actually authentic or not. Like whether hadith is
Exactly.
reliable or not has nothing to do with whether people actually follow hadith or not. Right?
Yes,
So, like, this is a stupid point.
Actually, if you relate this with Christian history, you can see how was Protestantism, born from. Because
Yeah.
Martin Luther was writing against the indulgence practices of the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to apply their logic to this, to how Protestantism was born, wouldn't that mean that Martin Luther was wrong, because all this while the Catholic Church has been doing indulgence, has been doing corruption in the church. So why did Martin Luther go against it? Okay, why
Yeah.
did Martin, and John Calvin as well? So these two were responsible.
I mean, right now
Yeah.
there are gay marriages happening in churches. Is that
Exactly.
allowed in the
Yeah.
Bible?
Exactly. Is it out? Is it they're already allowing marriage? They're already allowing gay priests even. Okay.
Yeah.
In the churches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So so is this even allowed?
Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are they again? What are they trying to say here? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Logically
Yeah.
speaking.
I mean, I think they're trying to make the argument that if this ruling applied, right, then we would see the people following it, but that doesn't follow. Just because a ruling exists doesn't mean that people will follow it.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
a
the fallacy.
fallacy.
I think they think that Muslims are this monolithic group that will obey
Yeah,
the
yeah,
prophet, without question, which is true. Of course, there are Muslims who do that, but at the same time, there are Muslims who do not know this, and they do something which goes against the prophet's
yeah.
teachings and against Islam,
By the
even.
way,
So
even if we were to accept like these Sufi groups who like really venerate graves, that still wouldn't be worship. So they're still wrong. So no one is worshiping these graves.
yeah, no one is taking the graves as God. Okay,
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah,
I mean, even the Shias, I don't think worship graves. I mean, the
I
debate here is that
yeah.
is between Sufis and Salafis is that
Yeah.
whether they're introducing innovations or not. The
Yes.
debate is not
Exactly.
whether they're
Exactly.
worshipping or doing shirk.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It's
even
not. It's
even
not.
Taymiyyah
Yeah.
was very careful to not call people kafir or say that people are committing shirk. Like scholars
Yes.
are very
Yes.
careful.
Yes.
They don't make that clear.
Yes. Yeah, the Salafi contention with the Salaf contention with these groups is that it's about the issue of innovation. Okay, because the Prophet
Yeah,
says that
yeah,
bid'ah is wrong, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, if it were authentic, we shouldn't found a mausoleum. What even is this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. That's the logic we are questioning these Christians.
Another comment we have. If you look at J. Smith's work, it goes completely against modern Western scholarship about Quran.
He has been
Yeah,
doing this right from 20 years ago. I can tell you that this is
20
nothing
years.
new for me. For me, this is nothing new. I know some people may be surprised at his methods, but for me, it's nothing new because I've been around even when he was very active. So I know what his methods are. So you see, that is why whenever he speaks, I don't listen to him at all. So, but the thing
Yeah.
is, unfortunately, of course, those who are not familiar with his arguments, they get their surprise. Do you know that the issue with Petra, that was actually introduced not by Dan Gibson, by the way, it's by J. Smith himself. He's the one who introduced it. Yeah,
Really?
he was the one. Yeah, he was the one who made the claim that the earliest mosque did not point to the Kaaba. Of course, he didn't name Petra specifically,
Yeah.
but he said that the earliest mosque did not point to the Kaaba. There's actually an article on the Islamic Awareness website which
Yeah.
actually refutes J. Smith. But
There's a lot of videos
yeah.
against Dan Brown,
Mm,
by the way.
mhm.
If you guys want to check out, there's a lot
You
of
mean
YouTube channels.
Dan Gibson? I think you mean Dan Gibson.
Yeah, Dan Gibson.
Yeah.
So let's continue.
Go. If the hadiths, as often suggested, come from the 7th century onwards, 8th century, surely there'd be none of these, especially in the most important place in Islam's geography, which would be places like Mecca and Medina. But that's not the case. Ibn Jubair, 1145-1217, describes the tombs at al-Baqi as he saw it during his travel to Medina. He says the grave of Hassan bin Ali, situated near the gate to its right hand, has an elevated dome over it. His head lies at the feet of Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, and both
So yeah,
graves,
they basically
graves
described like.
please note that
that
really is
these
the part that I'm
mausoleums
going to
existed.
attempt to.
Yeah, I think
And
you can
that's
skip
nothing
this
new.
part actually. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
you can skip that part and just move on to the actual point. They're just trying to describe what the Muslims visitors
Yeah.
saw in
Yeah.
Medina. Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. So they
Yeah.
make a very interesting claim about Imam al-Nawawi. So let's take a look at this.
Okay. All right.
To repeat. The visitor stands and greets the Prophet, then he moves to greet Abu Bakr and Umar. Then he returns to his original position, directly in front of Allah's messenger, and he's referring to the grave of Muhammad, and he uses the Prophet as his means in his innermost self, and he seeks his intercession before his exalted and mighty Lord. And one of the best things that he can say is what has been narrated by our colleagues on al-Utbi's authority, and they admired what he said. As I was sitting,
Okay, so this is a story from Imam Nawawi's about what we should do if we visit, the Prophet's grave. And this is some of the points he point out that what are the things that should be done. However, what they try to make it seem like is that Imam Nawawi is saying that somehow this means that he's saying the grave should be worshipped, but he never said that. Like if you read it carefully, it's pretty clear that. So basically, what they're saying is that and seek his intercession before he's exalted and mighty Lord. And one of the best things he can say is that has been narrated by our colleagues. So basically, seeking intercession is not the same as praying for intercession, right? Because there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that if you say salam to me in my grave, then I will make intercession for you. right? But that doesn't mean. So in a way, if people visit and give him salam, that's a way for people to seek intercession. But that doesn't mean they're praying for intercession. You know what I mean?
Yes, I get what
So
you mean. I get what
so
you
what they're saying is a lie. This is not Imam Nawawi, what now Imam Nawawi is saying. As a matter of fact,
mean.
let
Yeah.
me show you some quote from Imam Nawawi, and he completely forbade any kind of grave veneration.
Okay.
So let me just pull it up. Okay, so hold on, let me share the screen.
No, sure. Take your time.
Okay, let me. All right, can you see it?
It's loading. Okay, now I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let me make the screen a little bigger. Okay, so this is you can find this quote from Imam Nawawi in Al Majmu. This is his book, and I'll give all the links in the description, inshallah. And this is what Imam Nawawi said: "It is disliked to pray towards the graves, and he should not pray in the direction of the grave or at the graveside to seek blessings from it, and out of glorifying it, the prohibitions stated in the relevant hadith."
Mhm.
Ashrafi and the scholars held that it is disliked to plaster the grave, to write the name of the deceased or otherwise on it, or to build on it, and there is no difference of opinion about this in our school. Our scholars, may Allah have mercy upon them, said that there is no difference between building a dome, a house, or other than that over the graves in terms of relevant rulings. If the graveyard is donated for the benefits of Muslims, it is prohibited to build on the graves. Our scholars said that such a building should be demolished, and there is no difference of opinion in this regard. Now,
Yes, yes.
does that sound like Imam Nawawi is saying the grave should be worshipped?
No, no, I don't. Not in the list. I mean, this
Exactly, it's
these
a lie.
Christians, they love to extrapolate things and make assumptions. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
you can see this. I've posted this fatwa from Islamic website,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you guys can check it out. But
Yes.
and they also lied about a bunch of things. So
Yeah.
they lied about the whole intercession thing. Intercession doesn't mean worship, and there's a hadith where the Prophet said that he will make intercession, but it doesn't say that people have to pray to the Prophet for intercession.
Yeah.
So that's a lie. Uh, and here's something I wanted to share. So basically, in the early times, there was no dome in front of like the Prophet's grave. It was later
Yeah.
added.
Yes.
So, for example, Sheikh Samsuddin Al Afghani, may Allah have mercy on him, said, Al Allama Al Khadandi said,
Ha-
discussing the history of the
Hajandi.
Green Dome. Yeah,
Yeah.
discussing the history of the Green Dome that was built over the grave of the Prophet, and explaining that it is an innovation that was done by some sultans and ignorant persons who erred and made a mistake. Listen to this: erred and made a mistake, and that is contrary to the
Yes.
clear Sahih
Yes.
Hadith and reflects ignorance of the Sunnah. And they then that they went to extremes and imitated the Christians who are confused and misguided. It should be noted that
Exactly.
until the year 678, there was no dome over the chamber. So basically, the Prophet ﷺ died in like the house of Aisha radhiyallahu anha, right?
Yes. Yes. And he
Yeah.
was buried
So
under the
yeah,
floor, I
and
think,
he
if I'm
was
not
buried
mistaken.
there. So there was already kind of like
Yes.
a structure there, right? But
Yes.
there was no
Yes.
dome upon it. So
Yes.
this is what the Sheikh is saying, that it should be noted that
Yes.
until the year 678 Al
Yes.
Hijri, there
Yeah.
was no dome over the chamber, which
Yeah. He was
contains.
buried. He was buried in this very same room where he passed away. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
There was no dome
So.
over the
Mhm.
chamber which contains the grave of the
Mhm.
Prophet. Rather, it was built by the king Al Zahir Al Mansur Kalawun Al Sahi in the year
Yeah.
678 Al Hijri, when this dome was built. So this dome was built later on. It was not something that the Prophet built or his companions built.
Yeah.
And 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 I have a bunch of quotes from scholars, but I will get to that later on. But this is
Right.
something I wanted to show. So what he's saying is absolutely false. And let me just share the. So yeah, what he's saying is complete lie. It's basically false. Thank you for clearing it up. I'm 90 minutes in now. Feels weird. Feels like you are in the future. No problem. DG ignores previous actual research. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't care about research. He just makes up his own stupid logical arguments.
Yeah.
What's the way here? 156. All right, so let's get to it.
Seen by the grave of the Prophet, a Bedouin Arab came and said, "Peace be upon you, O Messenger of Allah. I've heard Allah saying, if they had only, when they were unjust to themselves, come to thee and asked Allah's forgiveness, and the Messenger had asked forgiveness for them, they would have found Allah indeed oft returning, most merciful. So I've come to you, asking forgiveness for my sin, seeking your intercession with my Lord." So you see what they're doing here is they are
Okay, so hold on.
going to the grave of Muhammad, asking Muhammad to intervene before Allah to get Allah's mercy and Allah's forgiveness. So they couldn't go directly to Allah; they have to go through the dead body of Muhammad.
No, that's not what they're doing. So if you read
This
what
guy
the
just
if you read what the
this
what
guy
it
just
actually
is just
says,
misrepresenting everything. Yeah.
yeah. If you read what it says in the screen, it reads, "As I was sitting by the grave of the Prophet, a Bedouin Arab came and said, peace be upon you, O Master of Allah. I have heard Allah saying, if they had only when they were unjust to themselves come unto thee and asked Allah's forgiveness, and the Messenger had asked forgiveness for them, and they would have found Allah indeed often returning, most merciful. So I've come to you asking forgiveness for my sin." Now here, he's trying to make it seem like he's saying this to the Prophet, right? But he's not saying it to the Prophet. He's saying it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then later on, he says that seeking your intercession with my Lord. Seeking your intercession, not praying for it. You get it? Like basically the Bedouin Arab is going there to visit the Prophet's grave to say his salam and seeking his intercession, but he's not praying for it. So basically they're trying to make it seem that he went there to pray to the Prophet, Auzubillah. But in reality, he simply went there to give his salam. And he's
These
seeking
people, they don't
intercession.
understand. You see, the thing is, they don't understand the concept of shirk. They think that it's just not, it's just worshiping the one true God and not bowing down to idols. But shirk, the concept of shirk is much more than that. Okay, it's not just not bowing to idols. You see, our definition is very, the scope is very large. You see, even if you do something, you pray to, let's say it's just a marble or something. You think this marble has some magical properties, and you pray to that marble asking for help and guidance. That is shirk, and it's just a marble. Okay. So these Christians, they don't understand the definition of shirk. See.
And the thing is, this story is basically in Imam Nawawi's book, and he's trying to make the point that this Arab, this Bedouin Arab, by the way, I don't know whether this incident is sahih or not. This could be a weak hadith, for all I know. But even if we were to accept this, it doesn't say that the Bedouin Arab went there to pray to the Prophet.
No, it still doesn't say anything of what the Christians say.
Seeking intercession, because the Prophet said that if you go to visit my grave and say salam, then I will intercede for you. So, and that's why he went. He didn't want to pray to the Prophet.
It could be a weak hadith, by the way, because this is from An-Nawawi's book, so I don't know. It could be a weak hadith. Yeah, it could be a weak hadith.
Hold on, let me just. Let me see if I can share. And by the way, in the Bible, there's counter example of like, but okay, we'll get to that. Let's continue.
Essentially, to ask for his intercession. Any thoughts or reactions to that, Jay?
That stands directly in
the stream won't be very long.
To Islamic belief, and certainly against the standard Islamic narrative. And any Muslim who's reading this would shudder in disbelief. This would be something that is being written in this case, the 13th century, that late. And yet there it is. It's from An-Nawawi himself. So it looks like this practice was quite prevalent certainly up until the 13th century.
Yeah.
By the way, I love how they try to make it seem like this practice, as in like Muslims are going there to pray to the graves, when that's completely false. They didn't establish that. All they established is
This is
Muslims were going to visit the
yeah,
grave. That doesn't mean they're going to pray there.
no, they are making it out as though the purpose of Muslims going to the grave in the first place is just to worship these graves. They have nothing, Muslims have nothing better things to do. They just go there just to pray. They don't consider that maybe Muslims visit the graves just to pay respects to the dead, their loved ones, maybe perhaps, or maybe didn't cross their minds that Muslims are also humans who visit graves, to so that they can see their loved ones in the grave, of course. And for those who go to the Prophet, it's because they will respect the Prophet and they want to give salams to him. Like, as you said, it's not about worshipping. I mean, Muslims have nothing better to do other than worshipping graves. Is that what they're saying? See?
Yeah, I mean, no scholar or there's no historical record of any Muslim going there to like bow down or something like that.
Exactly. I mean,
even the Sufis who go there, like
yes.
who
I mean,
go very
in the
extreme.
case of the extremist Sufis, maybe perhaps there's a debate there, but overall speaking, with the even with you have to keep in mind they're not representing the majority of Muslims anyway. So I don't think the majority of Muslims are going to graves to worship graves. Okay. Yeah.
So let's continue.
And I would say that, to me, it seems more likely that this came first. This practice was probably from the earliest days, and the Hadiths are a redaction in reaction to this practice that they're trying to eliminate, because it's clearly a theological embarrassment in later centuries.
What are they talking about? What theological embarrassment?
So basically, they're saying that in the past, Muslims used to worship graves, but later on, it was changed by Ibn Taymiyyah and Muhammad Ibn Wahhab. That's what they're trying to say. I think that is what they're. So this theological shift is because they were embarrassed by the, which is absolutely nonsense. Okay.
Hold on. There's a comment. I had to do this, but didn't Yasir Qadhi say it is allowed-ish to grave worship, but not to the dead? I vaguely remember this event. No need to touch upon this if it will cause controversy. I don't know about this. I mean, Yasir Qadhi is...
I think I've
think
seen
he
this
said
video of Yasir Qadhi, but he didn't say it onto grave worship. He said praying, like praying for blessings, like praying for for the loved ones to to get
he didn't say you can worship graves.
Yeah,
No
but he didn't
Muslim
say
says that.
he doesn't say that you need to bow down before the grave or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
No.
If
that's
any
different.
Muslim says,
Yeah.
if any Muslim says that like grave worship is allowed, then
Basically,
he's not a Muslim.
prayer here means basically it's a dua. Actually, it's not prayer per se. Yeah, need to keep in mind in Islam we have a difference between dua and salah. Okay, so this is something in English it's translated as prayer anyway, but both are prayers, but in Islam it's a bit different, right?
Yes, he said there's two different opinions. That was the best, most likely after he left Salafism. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I don't think he said like you can worship graves.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Yasir Qadhi has his opinion, but I don't think he says that. I don't think he's saying that you are allowed to worship graves. Okay, I don't think so. Yeah.
Because they are trying to present Islam as a monotheistic religion, and yet people are going to the grave of Muhammad and asking for his intercession, which places Muhammad as somewhere between a human and God, perhaps like a demiurge or a demigod.
Dude, these idiots even listen to themselves. I mean, when our shahada, it is so silly that it's easily refutable by just saying the shahada. The shahada says La ilaha illallah. There's no worship except God. There's no God except the God. And then Muhammadun abduhu wa rasuluh. Abduhu. Muhammad is the servant and messenger. I mean, Muhammad is his servant, is a God's servant. How can you say that we worship Muhammad? It's just absurd. Okay. Even the shahada already refutes you. We don't have to go even deeper than that. We don't even need to come up with hadiths or whatever to prove anything else. Just say the shahada is enough. It's so silly, man. It's beyond I don't know what to say. I'm speechless.
So
I'm suspicious at the silliness, not because of the. Yeah.
they're making up this own theory, and it's just complete nonsense. Like, do they think
Yeah,
that like
yeah,
their audience is
yeah,
just purely
yeah.
stupid? Like, that they must
I
think
think they
that,
do.
right?
I think they do. I think they do. They believe that their audience will just believe them, and just I mean, like I said
Yeah,
earlier on in this session, what are Mel's credentials anyway? What is
yeah,
credentials? Who is this guy? I don't even know who he is. At least Jay Smith, I know who he is, but he's just a missionary. He's
yeah,
just a washed out missionary who failed to convert anyone at Speaker's Corner, and then he got
yeah.
kicked out of the United Kingdom, and he's now in
Really,
the US.
he got
I
kicked
so I
out.
heard. So I heard. Well, not really kicked out per se because he wasn't having any success in Speaker's Corner. So people just ignore him when he's speaking at Speaker's Corner. So that's why he left. And he has never come back to the UK since. And he spent like
Yeah,
10 years or 20 years of his life in the UK. Okay, imagine
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Brother A says in the subcontinent, i.e., South Asia, there is obsession with graveyard is extremely problematic. Yeah, there is an obsession with graveyards. That is true.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think you're referring to this sect called there was this Breveli, I think, right? The Brevelis, if I'm not
no, it's
mistaken. Yeah.
basically there's a lot of like different
Yeah,
sects
I
that
mean,
like
I think one of them is
theists
the
and whatnot.
Brevelis. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So and then there's a lot of Sufi groups and so on. I understand that, but of course, these people, they don't represent the Muslim world in general. Okay, they are just they are, if you were to count the population, it's like small group of them. Okay, in the whole, we are true billion Muslims. Okay, so how many
yeah.
people are there doing this? You see,
Uh,
yeah, just do the math. Yeah.
So obviously this is embarrassing, and they're trying to get rid of this.
And when you
at
say
later time.
embarrassing, for those just so people know what you're talking about, and we've talked about this in earlier episode, what this is suggesting is when you look at this if this is happening in the 1300s and the traditions are from the 9th and 10th century, it looks like the 9th and 10th century traditions which confront this are not written in the 9th and 10th century, but must be written much, 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 much later as
what is he
Oh
talking
my
about?
god, this guy is such an idiot. I mean, yeah, he's going back to his revisionist theories again. Yeah,
Yeah,
so just like you said earlier, this is the fallacy of force. Just
yeah,
because Islam says that grave worship is not allowed, doesn't mean that people are going to obey it. In the later centuries. Okay, innovations happen. Okay, look at
yeah,
early Christianity. Okay, I think this one I have to touch a bit on Christianity, right? So
yeah,
in the first century Christians, there were many versions of Christianity. Okay, some
yeah,
say Jesus is God, some say Jesus is not God, some say Jesus is a divine being but not God, some say Jesus was an archangel. There's so many competing versions of Christianity. Okay, so eventually in the 4th century, then we have the Council of Nicaea, which states that because of the dispute between Arian.
bro. I think you're stuck.
So just to talk a bit about it, Arians.
Yeah,
Am I stuck again? Hello. Okay, sorry about that.
yes, yes.
So
Yeah,
so basically, in the 3rd century, there was this huge dispute between Arius. Okay, Arius was a bishop. Okay, and another guy called Athanasius. So Arius was arguing that Jesus was divine. Okay, both of them were saying Jesus was divine,
yeah,
but Arius was arguing that Jesus was subservient to the Father, even though he was divine, but he's subservient to the Father. Whereas Athanasius was arguing that Jesus is co-equal, co-eternal with the Father. So this dispute came to a head, and then in the 4th century, it was then decided at the Council of Nicaea, which the Emperor Constantine called for, which decided that Jesus is indeed co-eternal, co-equal. So the Athanasians won the debate, and then eventually, the belief of Arius was stamped out. Okay, because the belief of Athanasius became the state doctrine of the empire, of the Roman Empire. So that was where Jesus was elevated as God, as co-equal, co-eternal, the second son of the Trinity. Okay, even then also they do not know who would be the third person of the Trinity. That was decided at the Council of Constantinople much later on, by the way, which decided that the Holy Spirit is also co-equal, co-eternal with
Yeah.
God the Father and God the Son. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is how Christianity evolved. Okay, so if this guy is trying to apply his history to Islam, I'm sorry, it's not how Islam works. Islam doesn't work that way. We don't need
Yeah.
councils to decide on our akidah, on our basic beliefs. Okay,
Yeah.
Christians probably do, but we Muslims don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically,
Mhm,
the argument they're making here is like,
mhm.
if something was not applied, that means that it's not historically reliable, which is false. Because
Yeah.
I mean, whether something was historically reliable or not
Mhm.
has nothing to do with like whether it was applied or not, okay? Or whether
Exactly.
people follow it or not. But in this case,
Yes.
people did follow it, right? Like for
Yes.
example,
Yes.
like there's this using like this weird rationalization that if like somehow there's like a I don't know
There's like
like
people who disobey this in the right now.
yeah,
It means
like for
that
example,
before this
if like
nobody,
Muslims like started drinking like alcohol, that doesn't make alcohol like legal.
exactly. So the the logic doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, let's continue.
Yeah.
We're
Sure.
going to find out. And we have said it already on our programs. We don't have any originals of Al Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud,
That's a lie.
Tirmidhi, or even Ibn Hisham or Al Waqidi or Al Tabari. We don't have any of the originals at all. They are all from copies. The earliest manuscripts we have for any of these don't really appear. Well, one appears in the 11th century, just one of the 9.
Okay, this is a lie. Hold on, let me just show you.
If he wants to talk about manuscripts, he should look at his Bible because we don't have any Bible from the 1st or 2nd century. Okay, the earliest that
No,
we
I
have
have,
is the 3rd century.
I
Yeah.
have certain things that I want to show.
Yeah.
Okay, so you,
Oh, by the way, you're not very clear. Okay, I think you're not using your mic. Yeah.
can you see it?
Yeah. Your voice isn't so clear. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, can you see it?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. Let me just. Okay, so if you go to like this website,
Yep.
hold on, let me just. Let me hold on. Let me just share the screen. Okay, so if you go to Islamic awareness and you click on the Hadith section, uh,
Yep.
and you will get. So they actually have a manuscript of Muwatta Malik, and can you see it?
Hmm. Yep. Can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's this one basically, and so date.
Yep.
Make it a little bigger. So this is from second half of 2nd century of Hijrah. So basically, it's from 7th century. So he was just saying that apparently we don't have any manuscripts from like 7th century. Anyway, so that's a lie.
No, because I think
Uh,
he forgets that the Muwatta Imam Malik is actually one of our oldest collection
yeah,
of hadith. It's not Bukhari and Muslim, okay? Because yeah, he doesn't get that, he hasn't got the chronology correct because it was Muwatta Imam Malik who wrote the first
yeah,
hadiths actually. Yeah. Bukhari and Muslim came much later. Yeah.
yeah. Hold on, let me just share a few quotes from a certain scholar. So there are basically a lot of early examples of like early hadith. Let me just share the screen. Okay, so can you see it? Hold on.
Yep. Yep, you can see it. Mm.
Okay. Let me just find the quote. Um, okay, so here. Uh, okay, so there's actually a book, and it's mentioned here. Hold on, I think.
Mhm.
Sorry if I'm taking so too long. By the way, I'm just trying to find the.
No, it's okay. Yeah, yeah.
Hold on. Um, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So this is the the page of like Islamic awareness, and they actually have this quotes
I
from.
think you're showing. Okay, all right, right. Okay, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So they have a bunch of examples. For example, from first century Hadith collection, there's a manuscript which is called the Sahifa
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Hammam
This is one of the
bin
earliest. Yeah.
Munabi. This
Saifa
is perhaps
Hammam
one of
bin
the
Munabi.
earliest known Hadith collections. Hammam bin Munabi was a student of Abu Huraira, well known among the scholars of Hadith to be trustworthy according to the book Arabic Literature to the end of Umayyad period. And I actually have the link to this book, which I will share in the link below, inshallah. So, an example of the Sahifa of Hammam bin Munba, a Yamanite follower and a disciple of companion Abu Huraira from like 6th century,
Yeah.
from whom Hammam wrote this Sahifa, which comprise 138 hadith and is believed to have been written around the mid first Al-Hijri 7th century. So this is from 7th century or early, like kind of close to very close to 6th century. The author then went on to say it is significant that introduces his text to the word. Abu Hurairah told us in the course of what he related from the Prophet, thus giving the source of information in the manner which became known as sanad or isnad. So basically, even back then, they had like this concept of isnad, right? Like chain of transmission, sanad or isnad, and the teacher of chain of teachers through whom an author reaches the Prophet, a practice invariably and systematically followed in hadith compilation.
Yes.
So basically, in this Sahifa, so basically one of the things one of the Orientalist scholar, he says the following: the text in Hammam and those and those recorded in Ibn Hanbal, Bukhari, and Muslim with the same isnad shows almost complete identity, except for a few omission and interpolation which do not affect the sense of the report. So what does that mean? That means that the hadith that is found in later with different chain, like in Bukhari and Ibn Hanbal, has the same report as that is found in this early copy, which means that this early manuscript, which means that these hadiths have been preserved.
Yes.
Like our science of hadith is literally proven to be true.
Yeah.
Like this
You
methodology.
if you compare with the Bible is totally
Yeah.
totally lost and corrupted to the core.
Yeah.
I can go into it later, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a clear evidence, and there's more.
Yeah.
And he later on
was
says,
enough.
I have found practically no sign of a careless or deceptive practice in the variant text common in the Saifa of Hammam ibn bin Munbia.
Munabi.
Monabi. So,
Yeah.
and he also said, on the other hand, the same hadith as told by other transmitters in the three collections studied show a rich variety of wording, again, without changing the meaning of the report. So all the reports are saying the same thing. That has authentic chain. Then another manuscript that is in Musnaf of Abdul Razak al-Sani, which says that while studying the Musnaf of Abdul Razak, I came to the conclusion that the theory championed by Goldizer, Shas, which he mentioned by the way, and in their
Yes.
footsteps, many other, myself included, which in general reject Hadith literature as a historically reliable source for the first century, Al-Hijri,
Yes.
deprives the historical study of early Islam of an important and useful type of source.
Yes.
So, so basically, like they're all saying, like even like the Orientalist scholars are agreeing that this hadith, these hadiths are reliable. Like even if you compare like different narration from like early manuscript to the later on hadith collection, you still see this similarity. Like they're the same
Yes.
report. which shows that this oral tradition has been preserved. Like our science of the Hadith tradition, it is been preserved.
Yes,
So
yes.
like we have this entire study of like Hadith literature,
Mhm.
and he's like dismissing it like out of hand, without any reasoning whatsoever. So I find this quite hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something new. Do you know the reason why Islamic Awareness built that library of Hadith manuscripts? You know,
Yeah, no, I don't know.
yeah. You don't know. The reason is because of J. Smith, because he has been. Yeah, that's the reason. Because yeah, I know the admin of Islamic Awareness. Okay, so he's familiar with J. Smith's argument. So
Oh,
actually, so the reason why he built this library of manuscripts and everything is because in response to J. Smith, the argument that he said that the hadiths are not preserved and all this is recycled arguments that he has been mentioning for the last 20 years. Okay, this is nothing new from him. Yeah,
yeah,
he's just recycling it now for a new audience who is
yeah,
not aware of his antics in the past. That's why.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you guys want to read the books, I have all the
Yeah.
links down below.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Actually, I would recommend anyone who wants to know more, they can read Islamic Awareness.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you want to go deeper into it, then I would suggest some books by Mustafa M. Azami. Yeah, and also Mustafa and maybe M. Hamidullah. Okay, so read those books and then read books on the history of the Hadith. But I would especially recommend M. Azami because M. Azami is a scholar of Hadith. He actually wrote 2 books on Hadiths, on the early
yeah,
Hadith literature and so on. You can actually Google his name. Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
By the way, M. Azami, this is something I found out about like several years back. He was actually a Hindu priest.
really?
Yeah. Yes, he was a Hindu priest, and then he converted to Islam, and then he went
Uh,
to Saudi Arabia. He studied at the University of Medina, and he became a
uh,
Hadith scholar.
oh
Yeah, he
wow.
became a Hadith scholar. Yeah, and then he wrote those books, and then he passed away. I think in 20, quite recently actually, 2017 or 2018. I don't remember. I could be wrong. Yeah,
Okay.
around that time. Yeah, very, very, very recent. Only 3 years or 4 years back, he passed away. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Mm,
So yeah, let's continue.
mm.
volumes. The others appear in the 15th and 16th century. So it looks like even what we call al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and all these hadith writers from the 9th century, we've always dated them 870, 875 and whatnot, late 9th century. We don't even know if that is correct anymore. It could well be from what you're suggesting here. We know that they would have to have been written after this period. This is the 13th century, and it looks like probably this theology of that is against the tombs and worshiping in tombs was something that was introduced in the 15th and 16th century.
Yeah, I like.
So he makes up with this whole conspiracy theory again. Like we already
Yeah,
talked
again,
about this,
this is
but
nothing.
regardless.
Yeah, like I said, this is nothing new from him. This is something he has been repeating for the past 20 years. Okay, even at Speaker's Corner. So nothing much to add on to that.
Yeah.
Thing is, once you have a book, you can always add extra hadiths to his work. But in terms of the
All right,
Do
let's skip
these
ahead a little bit.
standardists doing the same thing with
that he could be unaware, he ought to have been aware if such hadiths exist.
So here they're talking about Imam Nawawi again, and I already showed like what the opinion of Imam Nawawi is. He clearly condemns this.
This idiot, he says that Imam Nawawi was a Hadith scholar. He's not really a Hadith scholar. He was a jurist, yes. He was a fiqh
Yeah, yeah,
jurist, yes. But a Hadith scholar, no, he's not a Hadith scholar. Yeah, not really.
yeah,
Yeah, not as deep as the others who study Hadith and find the problems in Hadith and so on. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's what they're talking about. Okay, so
His issuance of a legal opinion, reportedly denouncing the visitation the public believed in, that it got him in trouble.
no, wait,
being
hold
first
on. They
proposed-
say something.
He ought to have been aware if such
for the hadith do not appear, except for the one volume in the 11th.
hadiths praying facing towards graves. It seems odd that he could be unaware. He ought to have been aware if such hadiths existed, as he was a Sunni, Safite jurist, and hadith scholar.
Okay, so this is a lie again. Like I'm gonna show you guys like some of the opinions of various different scholars who all said that grave veneration is not allowed. So let me just share the screen. Okay, so hold on. Let me just go back up. Okay, so here we go. So this is an opinion of Imam Malik. This is what he said, and he lived in the 7th century, by the way.
Yep.
Sheikh Khalil al-Khalidi said, Ibn Wahb narrates in his al-Muqtashar, Malik was asked, where should the one who intends greetings the Prophet at his grave stand? Imam Malik said, from the corner close to the Qibla and to the pulpit and face the Qibla. And I do not like it if the graves is touched with the hand. So here what it makes clear is that Muslims are not even allowed to touch the graves,
Exactly.
right? So basically what he's saying is that if someone should visit the grave, what should they do? Or greet, like, we're allowed to like greet,
Yeah,
say
the
salams
the
to the
adab,
grave.
the
Yeah.
adab of visiting the grave, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Imam Malik is saying that you shouldn't, you should stay at a corner and
Face the
and
Qibla.
yeah, face the Qibla.
Yeah,
That's what he's saying.
exactly.
Another scholar
Yeah.
from 10th century, his name is Tuttusi, said, one must not wipe over the grave of the Prophet, and likewise, one must not wipe over the pulpit of the Prophet. So
Yeah.
again, he's saying that we're not allowed to touch the pulpit of the Prophet or
Yeah.
even the grave of the Prophet. Does that sound like
Yes.
worship?
No, doesn't sound like wish you at all.
So then Abdul Qadir Hanbali al-Jilani, another 10th century scholar who lived 100 years before Ibn Taymiyyah, said the following: when one visits a grave, one must not put his hand on it nor kiss it, as is the habit of the Jews.
Yeah.
You can read about this in Al-Gundiya by Abdul Qadir al-Jilani.
Mm.
Ibn Qadama quotes Imam Ahmed and his student who lived in the 7th century as saying the following. He says, and it is not recommended to wipe over the wall of the grave of the Prophet or kiss it. Ahmed said, I
Yes.
do not know of this practice. Athram, student of Imam Ahmed, said, I have seen the people of knowledge, Ahlul Ilm of Medina, and none of them touch the grave of the Prophet. They depart and send salam upon the Prophet, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
clear like destroys this whole absolute nonsense. And this is like a student of like Imam Ahmed, right? He lived in 7th century.
Exactly.
7th century, he's saying that
Exactly. Exactly.
the student of knowledge, they used to go there, give their salam, and then they used to leave. That's it. No praying, nothing,
Exactly.
and no one
Exactly.
was praying on the graves. Brian Bradley says, I've seen people kiss the grave of Prophet Muhammad. By the way, you misspell prophet. Learn how to spell prophet first. No, and yes,
Oh,
if some people
it,
does do
yeah.
that, that's wrong, because that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's a bunch of scholars. Like I have a website, like Ibn Hussein actually wrote a very thorough report on this. He quoted all the scholars, whether it's Hanbali, Shafi, Maliki, Hanafi. They have all said that you cannot touch the grave. So if you cannot even touch the grave, and you're only allowed to like say your salam, clearly that's not worship. And clearly no one is saying that you can make intercession there. And there's a fatwa on Islam QA where they make it clear that asking for intercession from anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not allowed. For example, can you see this verse?
Yeah.
So here it says that say all intercession belong to Allah alone, and no one can intercede except by His leave. You can read about
Yes.
this in Surah Al-Zumur 39,
Yes.
44. So it's clear. It's clear in the Quran. So they're talking absolute nonsense. Now, if we go down, I've actually listed all the scholars, and you can see that even in the Bible, this is not allowed. Like, do not make idols or set up an image or sacred stone for
Yeah.
yourself, and do not place a curved stone in your
Yeah.
hand to bow down before God.
Sadly they don't obey this because they always kiss the cross and they bow down to a
Yeah,
man. Okay, so
yeah,
so much for following Leviticus.
yeah. Leviticus
Yeah, they
26:1. Then
Yeah,
it
yeah.
says, drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all the carved
Carve
images
image. Tell that to the
and their cast
Catholics.
idols, and demolish all their high places.
Yeah,
Numbers
tell that to the
33
Catholics and
52.
Eastern Orthodox. Yeah, yeah. There's a
Then it says, when the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, and drive out before you many nations, the Hitters, Girgash, Aramites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Havites, Jebusites,
Jebusites. Yeah.
seven nations larger and stronger than you, too, and the Lord your God has delivered them over to you, and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your children away from following me to serve other gods. And the
Yeah.
Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. This
Yeah.
is what you are to do to them: break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles. I don't know what that means, and burn
Uh,
their idols in
long
the
story
fire.
behind that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and burn their idols in the fire. Again, it's clearly said that you must destroy the idols in the fire.
Yeah, basically
For you are,
they cannot have any altars or anything
yeah,
that
yeah,
represents an idol. Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty much
For
that.
you are
Yeah.
people holy to the Lord your God, and the Lord your God has chosen you out of all people on the face of the earth to his people, his treasured possession. And
Yes.
then it
Yes.
says, like, I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all who live in Jerusalem. I will destroy every remnant of Baal worship. Right?
Baal.
So
Yeah.
basically, talking about destroying idols of like Baal.
Yeah, but yes, correct, correct. This is during the era of of Isaiah and Elijah, yeah, Elijah and Elisha, etc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Baal worship in this place, the
Mm-hmm.
very name of the idolatrous priest. You can read about this in Zephaniah 1:4. So, so yeah, it's clear that like grave worship is not allowed either in Islam or in Christianity. So I really don't know why they're like even trying to make this argument. And
Yeah, it goes back
so
to the narrative of rewriting history. That's the whole point. Actually, that's what they're trying to achieve. Yeah, they're going to plant this idea that Islamic history has been, you saw how J. Smith, that old fart, he likes to keep on, acronizing the word sin as standard Islamic narrative. He turns it into sin. He just wants to plant it into his audience that that the so-called Islamic narrative is wrong and only
yeah,
his narrative is right. You see, and then he scares his audience and then he writes it as sin. You see.
yeah,
So there's a
yeah,
purpose.
yeah,
There's a reason why he does this. Okay, he wants to plant that idea into his audience minds, his gullible audience's minds. See,
yeah.
so
By the way, I
it's
want to
all a
read
missionary.
a
Yeah, yeah,
hadith,
sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
which shows that yes, Muslims can visit the graves.
Mm-hmm.
Even Muslim reported that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I
Yeah,
had prohibited you from visiting graves, but you may visit them now. Verily, they
yeah,
will weaken your attachments to the world and remind you of the hereafter.
yeah.
Yeah,
This is about
read about
visiting
this.
graves. This is not about worshiping graves. You see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's
Sunan
right.
Ibn
So,
Majah,
this
1571.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they don't know why these missionaries think that this is somehow
Yeah.
preventing us from visiting graves. You see, or
Yeah.
having
All they
graves for that
prove is
matter.
that like people used to visit the graves. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
They
exactly,
didn't prove
exactly.
like people used to worship like graves.
Yeah,
Absolute
yeah,
nonsense.
yeah.
Anyway, so then another report said, Buraida reported, the Prophet ﷺ said, uh, used to teach them as they went to visit the grave, saying to their inhabitants, peace be upon you, O people of this abode, from the believers and the Muslims. We will soon, if Allah wills, be joining you. I ask Allah to grant well-being to us and to you. Read about this in Sahih Muslim 975. So basically, it's talking about the prayer that we say to Allah Subhanahu wa
Yes,
Taala
exactly.
about
Mhm.
the people of the grave.
Yes,
Again,
exactly.
this is not worshiping the people of the grave.
No, this is not
Right.
worshiping the graves and taking them as as idols or whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing of the sort. Mm.
Brian Bradley says Christians don't worship grave. Is that true?
Yeah, you tell that to the Catholics. They ask, the saints for intercession to God. So you tell me whether that's worship or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the
Brother,
Protestants, of
free
course,
your
would deny
mindset.
it.
Just
Yeah.
subbed the Muslim Apologist. Looking forward
Oh,
to seeing
thank you.
learning from him.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, Jazakallah khairan.
No problem. Okay, so hold on. So yeah, we went through the Hadith thing. Okay. Anyway, so let's continue.
Mhm.
And then we'll Chrome tab. Okay.
So if like you can't get more expertise than that in terms of hadiths. So why is he contradicting the hadiths? If these
He's not contradicting the Hadith. He literally says, and again, I quoted that he
He's
literally
repeating
said
the
that you
hadith.
cannot.
He's not contradicting the hadith. Get that right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he literally said that you shouldn't pray towards the graves, but
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
exactly, it was a portion of his life in prison for his teachings.
Yeah,
His
we know
last
that already.
imprisonment was caused
What's
by
new
his,
about this?
for example, here,
No,
like,
wait.
so radical and so different to what the public believed in that it got him in trouble. So, for example, here, let me just jump to this point here.
I missed something.
Prohibitions seem to by Ibn. So, for example, here, let me just jump to this point here. Ibn Taymiyyah spent a lot by Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Now listed those particular hadiths. Such prohibitions seem to have been first proposed by another jurist who was influential after him, Ibn Taymiyyah. However, his innovative ideas were rejected at the time, and it was only in a much later period that they were taken up again by Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Now,
What is it talking about? I just showed like a bunch of scholars all saying like, you shouldn't like kiss the.
No, he's just focusing on An-Nawawi and he's focusing on Ibn
Yeah,
Taymiyyah and Abdul Muhammad Ibn Wahhab. He didn't focus on the other scholars. See,
Yeah.
you notice
So
how
basically-
you notice how they cherry pick certain scholars to fit their narrative.
Yeah.
If you notice that they don't quote like other like Imam Malik, from Muwatta, Imam Malik, he didn't
Yeah,
quote him. The
Yeah.
earlier ones, he didn't quote those. He only quote certain people.
Yeah.
So this is
Even
the
Imam
narrative.
Ahmed, right?
Yeah.
Imam Ahmed is from the 7th century, and he clearly said,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
his
He didn't
student
quote
Athari,
him,
he
right?
clearly said that
Yes.
the student of knowledge used to visit and they used to give their salam and then they used to leave. Like where is
Yes,
the grave worship
yes.
here?
Yes, you see, he didn't quote him either. You see,
Yeah.
there's a reason,
So
and there's a reason for
this
that.
is cherry picking.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is cherry picking.
Yes, it's cherry,
interesting
it's cherry
that
picking.
Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas were so radical and so different to what the public believed in that it got him in trouble. So, for example, here, let me just jump to this point here. Ibn Taymiyyah spent a large portion of his life in prison for his teachings. His last imprisonment was caused by his issuance of a legal opinion, reportedly denouncing the visitation of the Prophet's grave.
Okay, I can call this bullshit
That's-
here. That's not the reason why he was jailed.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
not the reason why he was jailed. I better not say expletive here. If otherwise I'll say something bad. but
That's a
basically, it's total nonsense. That's not why he was in prison for. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't the reason why he was imprisoned. So
Yeah,
basically, there was a false allegation against him, which is that he apparently said something. Hold on, let me just quote a certain scholars, and we can see this. So basically, they're saying that like Ibn Taymiyyah was like arrested for this.
Arrested for saying something and speaking against grace, but that's not. But again, like I said, that's not the reason why he was arrested for.
Yeah. Hold on, let me just bring up the quote. Hold on, let me share the screen.
I actually have a biography of Ibn Taymiyyah somewhere, but I couldn't. It'll take some time for me to find it. So next time, I
No
guess.
problem. I actually have that quote. Hold on.
I have
So,
somewhere about him there.
so this is a lie. Can you see the
Mm.
screen? Let me
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it.
I can see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So this is a lie. Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah did not prohibit people from visiting the grave of the Prophet. Ibn Kathir actually, in his book Al-Bid'ah wal Nihaya, says the following. It was written that Ibn Taymiyyah, even said, truth is that visiting the grave of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and other people is sin according to consensus. Now, see, this is a forgery on Shaykh al-Islam. In this issue, Ibn Taymiyyah did not prevent people from visiting the grave of the Prophet and Salihin. In fact, he mentioned two sayings regarding traveling to visit the graves. Visiting the graves without traveling is one issue, and traveling only to visit the grave is another issue. Sheikh did not prohibit the visiting without the travel. In fact, he said it is preferable and allowed. He did not say it is a sin, nor he said there is a consensus. He was not unaware of the hadith of the Prophet, where he said, visit the graves, for they remind you of the hereafter. And this is the hadith I just quoted, right?
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah, you could
there
tell
is
you. Yeah.
nothing hidden from Allah, and no one can hide from Him. And those who do wrong will come to know by what overturning they will be overturned. You can read about this in Al-Bid'ah wal Nihaya, volume 14, page number 146. Then Imam Ibn Abdul Hadi said, this saying is a forgery on Shaykh al-Islam. His answer does not contain prohibition of visiting the graves of the Prophet. Uh, and righteous. He mentioned two saying, and he's saying the same thing regarding traveling and visit. So basically, what the scholars are saying here is that the Prophet, the Ibn Taymiyyah did not say that you cannot visit the grave. He simply said there are two conditions that when you're visiting the grave of the Prophet, which is that you cannot go there with the intention of visiting the grave, right? If
Yes,
you go there, you
yes.
have to go there for a Hajj or to visit the mosque or whatever, but you cannot go there with the intention of visiting the grave. You can go there, but your intention has to be something else. Now, if you get there and you want to say your salams to the Prophet, then that's allowed. That's completely fine. However, what he simply said is that you can, like, if you go there and normally visit like the Prophet's grave, that's completely fine. But you cannot intend to visit the grave and then go there. And that's basically what he said. And they're saying that he literally said that do not visit the grave of the Prophet, which is a lie. And you can see this, and this saying is a forgery. Shaykh al-Islam, his answer does not contain prohibition of visiting the grave of the Prophet and righteous. He mentioned two saying regarding traveling visit the grave and take blessings. Traveling to visit the grave is an issue, and visiting that grave without traveling is another issue. And Sheikh did not forbid visiting without traveling. Rather, it's desirable and allowed, and his writing in Manasik are witness over it. He did not object to this visiting in his fatwa. Neither he said it's a sin, nor he mentioned any consensus on its prohibition. And nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read about this in Al-Uqlud At-Turaya. So it's clear. Like, he did not say this. So this is a lie. It's a clear lie.
I'm actually trying to check out what the reason why he was in prison. Wait, let me check. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, basically, people made like false allegation towards him, and that's why he was arrested. Like, people make up this allegation that he's saying that, he basically his opponent were saying that he's saying that people cannot visit the grave of the Prophet, but he
Yes,
didn't say
yes,
that.
yes.
Right?
Yeah,
So this is
yeah,
a massive straw man.
yeah, exactly,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah, I see here. Yeah, okay. It's important anyway. He condemned the cult of the saints, and he declared that visiting the Prophet's graves was a blameworthy religious innovation. Okay, so he was falsely accused of this. So
yeah,
he got imprisoned, but he did not say this. You see?
yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't say this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's continue.
So it's hard. The word is of Egypt and Syria, and died in prison together with his legal opinions condemning grave visitation and the belief in intercession.
He
Despite his
didn't
engaging
condemn
in
any
similar
of this.
debate whether days Islam, the destruction of mausoleums dedicated to Muhammad's closest companions. Picture of the mausoleums. I think this picture is show that there were domes, cupolas, and mausoleums, and apparently the wives of the Prophet and so on. And yet they
So
decided that they're going to
basically, that's about
destroy.
it. And that's basically their argument. Should we continue watching the rest of the basically this is their argument.
Well, basically, this is the gist of it, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have to
this is
waste
the gist of it.
another 20 minutes to repeat, listen to them.
Yeah, let's not waste our time. Yeah, we're done with this.
Yeah.
So basically, their main argument was that, you know, that so this is their narrative, right? And they do this all the time. And They do
Yes.
this all the time. So basically, their narrative is, we Muslims, they claim that hadiths are reliable, and if it is reliable, then rulings of this hadith
Yeah.
will be applied, right? We see that these rulings were not applied, therefore the hadiths are not reliable. There's so many problems with this argument. First of all, whether hadith is historically reliable or not has nothing to do with whether people actually follow it or not. Okay, it's a non sequitur fallacy, and this is a well-known fallacy. So I'm surprised that J. Smith, who's supposed to be an academic, does not know this logical fallacy. I mean, this is astounding to me.
Let me
And so
correct
this
you
is the
there. He's
first.
not an academic. Let me correct you there. He's not academic. He's not an academic. No, he's
Okay.
not academic. He has never had any degree or even a master's in Islamic studies. Yeah. Several years ago, this is based on hearsay, but it's from a reliable source. He did try to attain his master's, okay, in Islamic studies from I think somewhere in Australia. He failed
Yeah.
his exams. The reason being he couldn't master Arabic, and that was like one of the criteria to pass his masters. Okay, so he couldn't even phantom basic Arabic. So how can this guy have any academic credentials?
Yeah.
So he tries to
So
make himself as though as he's as a scholar, because people get fooled by this, but actually he's not a scholar. He has never been one.
yeah, yeah, it's just stupid. But anyway, so that's
Yeah.
like their first kind of like argument, and that's
Mhm.
first problem with their argument.
Yeah.
Second problem is that whether something is historically reliable or not, it's a completely independent study, right? It has nothing to do with
Exactly.
whether people actually apply those rulings or not. Like
Exactly.
whether, for example,
Exactly.
and we have evidence of why the hadith literature is reliable. For example, we
Yes.
have the
Correct.
early manuscript, we have the oral
Yes, we do.
tradition,
Yes, we do.
which you can falsify and show that, and compare and contrast it with other chain of narrations, and you can figure out which chain of narration is actually reliable and which one is not. It's an entire
Yes.
science, right?
Exactly.
You can
Exactly.
falsify
Exactly.
this method. So this is the
Exactly.
most reliable historical way to determine truth. Like it doesn't
Basically,
get more
basically, the
reliable.
science of Islam is impeccable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
recognized as a very strong science, which even the Bible
Yeah.
cannot meet this criteria. If we apply
Yeah.
the science of Islam upon the Bible will be thrown into the dustbin by now. Okay,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's totally based on the science of Islam. Every
Yeah,
single
the
story can
problem
be
with like the
questioned.
Bible
Yeah.
narration is that
Yeah.
you have like contradictory information, which is
Yeah, a
fine
lot of
because
it.
even if you have contradictory information, if there is a way to like reconcile them, that's fine. But there's no way to
Yeah.
reconcile them. We don't know who
No
wrote
way
them.
at all.
We
No
have the
way at
chain
all.
of transmission, so we have
None
no way
at
to
all.
verify which is actually authentic, which is not.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
based
why
on
this type of
it's all
information
based on
is not.
it's based on hearsay and just
Yeah.
attribution to people. Like for example, okay, I give you an example, the story of the death of Jesus at the crucifixion. It says that there were thousands of people who saw it, but who are these thousands of people? What are their names? Where do they come from? Who were
Yeah.
their parents? Where did
Yeah.
they go after Jesus was crucified? Okay, even in the narration itself, it said that the disciples actually ran away when they saw that Jesus was arrested, and was carried to the cross. So who was actually there?
Yeah.
Who actually saw Jesus being crucified? Okay,
No
so
one.
even yeah, exactly. I mean, and also if you look at the stories of the resurrection of Jesus, where the Mary, they have 3 or 4 contradictory accounts. One account says that Mary, it was 2 women who saw Jesus. There's another one says that it was a disciple who saw Jesus out of the tomb. Another one says it was only Mary who saw him out of the tomb. So which story is true? They can't all be true. Yeah. You can't. There's no way to reconcile them. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no way to
no way to
reconcile
tell
them.
which is true and which is not.
Yeah. Exactly.
Reliable.
Exactly. Yes.
So
Another
yeah,
thing
that
also, yeah, another example, one last example I want to give is the narrative in the genealogy narrative in Matthew and Luke. Totally
yeah,
different, contradictory genealogies. Okay. So if
yeah,
you just look at Matthew and Luke, you can see for yourself. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so and that's one thing, right? I mean, like first of all, whether something is historically reliable or not has nothing to do with people, whether people apply it in their daily lives or not. Like for example, there are Christians who are going out there, doing all kinds of nonsense. For example, gay marriage and like what this is the LGBT
Exactly.
activism. A
Exactly.
lot of Christians are
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
it. It Bible
Exactly.
says that it's not
Exactly.
allowed. Does that mean
Yeah.
that Bible is
Exactly.
not historical reliable? Like whether Bible is historically reliable or not has nothing to do with people actually follow it or not, right? And that goes for any kind of like uh,
Mm.
historical books.
Actually the easiest example is if you look at the statement by Jesus. He said, uh, "No, I came not to destroy the law, meaning the law of Moses. I came to fulfill it. So not one jot, not one tittle will I change this." And the
Yeah,
law of Moses, which basically is the Jewish law, says that you cannot eat pork, but
yeah,
Christians are eating pork. So that's what, yeah. So that's the
yeah,
thing. That's the question we have. So who's you know? So
yeah,
who's more correct, the Jews or the Christians? The Jews do not eat pork, by the way. They don't eat pork
yeah,
until today. They don't eat pork, but the Christians are eating pork, even though Jesus says that, he did not come to destroy the law of Moses. So why Christians aren't following, the law and what Jesus is telling them to do, basically to follow the law, but
yeah,
they are not doing that. Yeah, you see. So
yeah,
same thing applies to gay marriages, of course. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's basically like the two problems that absolutely destroy this whole nonsense. And then they
Mm.
go on to like this. Oh, brother, Detective O'Neill is here. Assalamualaikum, brother.
Walaikum
He's
salam. Oh, brother detective. Yeah, I've been following your channel. I really love your channel. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
amazing
yeah. He
channel.
makes
Yeah,
he makes videos on
he makes very
APOS.
good videos. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
his favorite subject is apes, right? Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you,
yeah.
bro.
Jazakallah. Yeah, okay, yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is basically the two problems. First, they commit the non sequitur fallacy, which is that whether the historical reliability has nothing to do with whether people follow it or not. The second one is that historicity is completely separate from people's whether people follow it or not. So
Exactly.
this is like the main problem, and everything else they said about like Islam is absolutely false. There were many scholars, even at the time of 7th century, who talked about that grave veneration is not allowed, and they have not shown
Yes.
any evidence which shows that Muslims worship grave. Not a single one. Yet that's what they claim.
Yeah, yeah. The worst they
Uh,
can do is probably show the extremists, the Sufis
yeah,
who venerate the grace. But even then, also
yeah.
that's not even that's not
That's
widespread,
not
and
worship.
there's not and it's not widespread out throughout the Muslim world. So what are
Yeah.
they talking about?
Yeah. Now, onto the issue of like building over like graves, and we know this. Like we know this is something that happened, and that was wrong.
Yes, yes,
Just because people did
yes,
it doesn't make it right. Like
yes,
no
yes.
scholar agrees with
Exactly,
this.
exactly. Yeah.
Like no
Unfortunately,
one
in
says that
Malaysia,
this is wrong.
there are graves which have Muslims over it, but this
Yeah.
is something that this is due to ignorance of the people. It's not because we want to
Yeah.
worship them or anything. Okay, it
Yeah.
happens. I think
Yeah.
everywhere it happens. So yeah.
Eating pork is
Yeah.
very common practice among majority of the Christian. That's what they're saying. Yeah, like Christians eat pork all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, they love pork. They love pork a lot.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely do. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's another thing. Uh, so yeah, and like onto the point of like historicity, uh, and yeah, we know this. We know that there were scholars who protested against this. And if you look at the historical records, there are many examples of this, right? Like, for example,
Yeah.
Muslims rulers have done things that they shouldn't
Yes.
have done, right? For
Exactly.
example,
Exactly.
and there are many examples like this. Like, for example, many Muslim rulers in modern times have abolished Sharia law, which they
Exactly.
shouldn't have done, and they did it.
Exactly.
They made the country
Yes.
secular,
Yep.
and I think one leader, Ottoman leader, they kind of abolished like caliphate, right? I think what was his
No,
name?
it's not. He was not an Ottoman. I think you're referring to Mustafa Kemal.
Yeah, yeah,
Ataturk. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, he
exactly.
was a
Ataturk.
secular. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the subject, I have biographies of him somewhere here. So
Okay. Yeah.
I have two
So yeah.
biographies on him.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So we know why this happened,
yeah,
and this is something that was not allowed. This is not something the prophet did or his companions did. So what they did was wrong, and the scholars
yeah.
condemned them for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's nothing to it.
Mm.
And if you look at like early scholars, they have always condemned this.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's been from the very beginning of Islam. The Prophet himself condemned, grave
yeah, yeah,
worships. Yeah.
yeah.
So, so it's not
So
something new. It's not something that was introduced very late in Islam. It's something that has
yeah,
been always been there from the beginning.
yeah,
Yeah, and just because some people disobey, this doesn't mean that the ruling isn't there. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I actually read somewhere that during when like this green dome was like being built, there was a certain scholar who actually protested against this.
Mhm.
And I feel like if you read like I think I read it in Abu Khadija's website, although I don't know how reliable it is, but I did read that there was a scholar who said that this is not allowed, and he did that at the time. It's not like he's doing it
Mhm.
later on, but they did it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean,
so
it happens. Yeah, it happens. People
yeah,
won't follow. Sometimes when people don't want to follow, they won't follow. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this has nothing to do with whether it's actually legit or not. Like for example, it is clearly prohibited that Muslims cannot like worship graves. No Muslim in the world worships graves. Even
No
Christians
Muslim
aren't
in the
allowed to
world
do it.
want to worship graves. Even if there is, then they wouldn't represent the majority of
Yeah,
Muslims. There are
yeah,
2 billion Muslims. Okay.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. So I guess we should end it.
yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
I don't want to
you
keep
want
you too
me?
long.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, what time is it now? Okay. My time now is 12:46 a.m.
Yeah,
Malaysian
yeah.
time.
It's actually 10 p.m. 10 p.m. here.
Okay.
So it was nice
Right.
talking to you, bro.
Yes.
Maybe
Okay.
we can do
Likewise. Of
another
course. Of
collab
course.
in the future. Yeah,
Sure. I'm always open to it. Yeah. Around this time will be great. Yeah. It's silent
yeah,
and very nice, peaceful. If you do it in the day during my time, it will be very noisy. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, I hope they take the scripture seriously. A very common claim that they have is not everything in the Bible is absolute, and blah blah. Yeah, yeah. This is something you hear. Like, what do you have to say regarding
Hmm.
this?
Basically what they believe that Jesus came to when Jesus died at the cross, Jesus took in the law for himself, and therefore the law has been in inverted commas abolished, even though Jesus himself said that he did not come to abolish the law but to fulfill it. Okay.
Yeah,
So this
yeah,
is actually an innovation by Paul. Okay, Paul was the one who said that the laws has been abolished with the coming of Jesus, and
yeah,
that Paul also needed to make a narrative of his own in order to justify his preaching to the Gentiles, and telling them why they can
yeah,
not need not to follow the laws, etc. So this was something which the true followers of Jesus were against. So Paul of Tarsus and these true followers of Jesus had a huge dispute because of this. So that
yeah,
is why Paul left them, and he went across the Mediterranean to preach his version of what he thinks is true Christianity. Very long story
yeah,
behind it, but I'm
yeah,
very much simplifying it. So basically, the innovation that the Christians do today is because of Paul of Tarsus. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if you visit my channel, you'll find out more about Paul. I'm actually doing a series on Paul.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We heard of it. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe we can do like another collab on your channel, inshallah.
Inshallah. If I figure out how to set up to because I'm still not familiar with how you set up a live stream, because I really
Uh-huh.
would love to do a live stream, inshallah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
inshallah. You can see like a lot of like tutorials on YouTube.
Okay. I will, I
Maybe
will, I will check it out. I will check it out. But I think we'll be using Google Meet because I have the software. I mean, I have the paid version of it. Okay.
okay. Yeah, sure, we can do it.
Yeah, all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you guys for watching. I think we'll
Yes.
end it here. Like, so
Right.
basically, we've demolished all the stupid arguments that they brought up.
Inshallah, we have, I believe, yeah,
Inshallah.
because
And,
basically
yeah,
the story, the narrative that J. Smith is trying to present is totally,
fallacious,
yeah, it's totally malicious and
fallacious,
revisionist
fallacious.
and
Yeah,
fallacious, and also just it has been
stupid.
thrown out by scholars like even
Yeah,
Patricia Cone and Michael Cook, who
Yeah.
were the first proponents of the idea, but they
Yeah.
themselves have denounced this
Yeah.
this idea. So why is J. Smith, repeating this again, even when scholars already refute, don't
Yeah.
follow this anymore. See,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, and I want to end this here. And again, thank you guys
okay,
for joining. I thank you, brother
okay.
Muslim
Yeah,
Apologist,
thank you for having me.
uh,
Inshallah, Alhamdulillah.
for
Thank you very
joining
much for
me.
this. Yes, yes, thank
And
you.
inshallah, we'll do more streams in the future, hopefully.
Inshallah. Of
Inshallah.
course. I'm looking
So
forward to it. Inshallah.
yeah, and
Okay,
you guys can follow me on social media, and you can also follow brother MENJ on social media as well.
of course.
And
Yeah, don't
if you
forget to
guys
subscribe
like,
to my channel.
yeah, of course, and subscribe my channel as well.
Yeah, tell it to
And
brother Islamic,
yeah,
yeah,
my
Calling's
channel as
channel
well. And
as
if you
well.
wanna support me or brother MENJ on like Patreon or something, you can also do that.
Yeah, it's in
And
the
yeah,
description.
yeah, it's in the description. Again, thank you guys for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi